The coffee mug was still warm. Sarah stared at it, her hands trembling as steam curled upward in the dim morning light, filtering through their apartment's kitchen window. The same mug Emma had used every morning for 3 years. The same chipped blue ceramic with the faded university logo that Sarah had watched her roommate sip from just yesterday. Except Emma had been dead for 2 weeks. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she noticed the familiar indentation in the couch cushions, the way Emma always sat with her legs tucked beneath her. The psychology textbooks were still open on the coffee table, highlighted passages glowing under the lamplight. Everything was exactly as Emma had left it, as if she'd simply stepped out for a moment and would return any second with that bright smile and infectious laugh. But the funeral was real. The casket was real. The grief counselor's words about moving forward had been real. So why did Sarah feel like she was living with a ghost, or losing her mind? Sarah had always prided herself on being rational, grounded in reality. As a graduate student in clinical psychology, she understood the human mind's capacity for self-deception, for creating elaborate fantasies to cope with trauma. She'd studied grief responses, phantom presence syndrome, and the way loss could fracture perception. But theoretical knowledge felt useless when confronted with the impossible. The apartment felt alive with Emma's presence. Her favorite lavender candle flickered in the bedroom, though Sarah was certain she'd never lit it. The shower ran at exactly 7:30 a.m., the same time Emma had religiously maintained her morning routine. Most unsettling of all were the conversations, soft murmurs drifting from Emma's room late at night, as if she were talking to someone on the phone. Sarah found herself tiptoeing through her own home, afraid to disturb whatever delicate balance kept this twisted reality intact. Part of her didn't want it to end. The alternative, accepting that Emma was truly gone, felt unbearable. Perhaps madness was a mercy compared to that crushing finality. The first direct encounter happened on a Tuesday evening. Sarah was microwaving leftover takeout when she heard Emma's voice behind her, clear as daylight. "You're going to burn it if you leave it in too long." Sarah spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. But the kitchen was empty. The microwave beeped its completion, the sound sharp and mocking in the silence. That night, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling, analyzing every possible explanation. Auditory hallucinations were common in grief. Her subconscious mind was simply processing loss through familiar patterns. But when she finally drifted off, she was awakened by the sound of Emma's typewriter, that vintage machine she'd rescued from a thrift store and used for her creative writing assignments. The rhythmic clacking echoed through the thin walls, punctuated by Emma's occasional frustrated sighs. Sarah crept toward the sound, her bare feet silent on the cold hardwood. Emma's door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see a figure hunched over the desk, fingers dancing across the keys with practiced precision. Sarah pushed the door open wider, her breath catching as moonlight illuminated the familiar silhouette. Emma's dark hair fell in gentle waves across her shoulders, just as it always had. She wore the oversized sweater she'd died in, the one the paramedics had cut away in their futile attempts to save her. But here she sat, whole and present, lost in her work as if nothing had changed. "Emma," Sarah whispered, the name barely audible. "You were always too curious for your own good, Sarah." Her voice carried that same warm affection it always had, tinged now with something else, something sad and distant. "You should be sleeping. You have that presentation tomorrow." Sarah's legs nearly gave out. Emma was right. She did have a presentation. But how could she know? How could any of this be real? She reached out with trembling fingers, desperate to touch her friend, to confirm this impossible reality. But the moment her hand should have made contact, Emma dissolved like smoke, leaving only empty air and the lingering scent of her vanilla perfume. The next morning brought no relief, only deeper confusion. Sarah found a typed page on Emma's desk, a story about two roommates, one living, one caught between worlds. The prose was undeniably Emma's, filled with her characteristic wit and poetic imagery. But the content was impossible, describing conversations and events that had happened after Emma's death, including details only Sarah could have known. Sarah's rational mind screamed that she must have written it herself in some dissociative state, but she had no memory of doing so. The typewriter ribbon was fresh, the keys still warm to the touch. More disturbing still, the story seemed to be writing itself, new pages appearing each morning, like messages from beyond. Dr. Martinez, Sarah's advisor, noticed her deteriorating condition during their weekly meeting. "You look exhausted, Sarah. Are you taking care of yourself?" But how could she explain that she was afraid to sleep, afraid to wake up, afraid of what she might find waiting for her in the space between reality and impossibility? The psychological thriller of her own life had become more twisted than any case study she had ever encountered. As days blurred into weeks, Sarah's grip on reality began to slip. She found herself having full conversations with Emma, discussing everything from their favorite TV shows to Sarah's growing concerns about her mental state. Emma would offer comfort and advice, her presence feeling as natural as breathing. They'd cook dinner together, Emma's hands guiding her through recipes she'd never attempted alone. But photographs told a different story. Sarah's phone captured only empty rooms and solitary meals. Security footage from the building's hallway showed Sarah entering and leaving alone, talking animatedly to empty air. The evidence was damning, yet Emma's presence felt undeniable. She could smell her shampoo, feel the warmth of her body during their movie nights, and hear her heartbeat during their rare, precious hugs. The psychological conflict was tearing Sarah apart. Either she was experiencing the most vivid, persistent hallucinations on record, or something impossible was happening, something that defied every principle of reality she had built her life upon. Both possibilities terrified her equally, leaving her suspended in a liminal space between reason and madness. The breaking point came during a dinner party Sarah reluctantly agreed to host. Emma had insisted she needed to socialize, to reconnect with the living world. As Sarah's friends filled the apartment with laughter and conversation, Emma moved among them like a gracious co-host, commenting on their stories, refilling drinks, even helping in the kitchen. "Emma's being so helpful tonight," Sarah mentioned casually to her friend Marcus, gesturing toward the kitchen where Emma was supposedly washing dishes. Marcus followed her gaze, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Sarah, are you feeling all right?" The conversation died as everyone turned to stare at Sarah, their faces reflecting a mixture of pity and alarm. Sarah looked toward the kitchen, where Emma stood frozen, her eyes wide with something that might have been fear or regret. In that moment, Sarah realized the horrible truth. She was the only one who could see Emma, the only one who could hear her voice, feel her presence, engage with her impossible existence. After her friends left, Sarah confronted Emma with trembling fury. "What are you? Why can't anyone else see you?" But her response shattered Sarah's remaining composure. "Because I'm not real, Sarah. I never was. Not the way you think." The revelation came in fragments, each piece more devastating than the last. Emma explained that she wasn't a ghost haunting their apartment. She was a manifestation of Sarah's fractured psyche, a coping mechanism so elaborate and persistent that it had developed its own consciousness. The trauma of losing her best friend had caused Sarah to create an alternate reality where Emma never died, where their friendship could continue indefinitely. "But you feel so real," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You know things I don't know. You write stories I could never write." Emma's smile was infinitely sad. "I know them because you know them, buried deep in your subconscious. I write them because you need them to be written.
I'm everything you loved about me, preserved in the amber of your mind, but I'm also everything you can't let go of. And that's not healthy for either of us.
The psychological thriller reached its climax as Sarah was forced to choose between comfortable delusion and painful reality. Emma explained that she'd been trying to help Sarah process her grief, but her presence had become a prison, preventing genuine healing. "You have to let me go," Emma said, her form already beginning to fade. "Not because I want to leave, but because you need to live." Sarah's mind rebelled against this impossible choice. How could she voluntarily destroy the one thing that made her loss bearable? But as Emma's image flickered like a dying flame, Sarah realized that holding on was slowly killing her. She'd stopped attending classes, neglected her research, pushed away living friends in favor of this beautiful lie. The unreliable narrator of her own story had been herself all along, crafting an elaborate fiction to avoid confronting the truth. With the strength she didn't know she possessed, Sarah whispered the words that would free them both. "Goodbye, Emma. I love you, but I have to let you go." Emma's final moments were both heartbreaking and beautiful. She smiled with genuine happiness, her form becoming translucent as she spoke her last words. "Thank you for keeping me alive in your heart. Now let me live in your memories instead." As she faded completely, Sarah felt a profound shift in her consciousness, as if a weight she'd been carrying for weeks had finally been lifted. The apartment felt different now, quieter, but not empty. Emma's belongings remained, but they no longer pulsed with impossible life. They were simply objects, precious reminders of a friendship that had been real and meaningful, even if it had ended too soon. Sarah began the slow process of genuine grief, no longer buffered by psychological barriers her mind had constructed. Months later, Sarah would complete her thesis on grief-induced hallucinations, drawing from her own experience to help others navigate similar psychological terrain. She'd learned that sometimes the mind's capacity for self-deception isn't a weakness, it's a survival mechanism, buying time until the heart is strong enough to face reality. The twisted story of her roommate's presence had become a case study in the beautiful, terrible complexity of human consciousness. The boundaries between reality and perception are thinner than we'd like to believe. Sarah's story raises haunting questions about the nature of consciousness, the power of grief, and the lengths our minds will go to protect us from unbearable truth. Was Emma's presence a gift or a curse? A manifestation of love or a symptom of psychological breakdown? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between, in that mysterious space where the living and the dead, the real and the imagined, meet and dance together in the theater of human experience. What do you think? Have you ever experienced something that made you question the nature of reality itself? Share your theories and experiences in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your perspectives on these mind-bending stories. If this psychological thriller left you questioning your own perceptions, hit that like button and subscribe for more twisted tales that explore the darkest corners of the human psyche. There are more dark secrets waiting to be unraveled, more unreliable narrators ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about reality. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.